doing out there? Welcome to another show of Toward a Quality of Life. Coming to you from the Roxbury studio of BNN TV, your local Boston television station. Glad to see you're tuning in. It's March 20th. I heard that it's the first day of spring. I always thought spring was March 21st, but I thought I saw the Weather Channel say it's spring today. And for those of us in this area, we're experiencing very cold weather, and we're thinking more like it might be the first day of winter, but still you can tell there's a touch of spring in the air. Why? Because A, there may be some, and B, because our memories remember what spring is supposed to be like. So we're waiting for it eagerly. Of course, the fact that we had a lot of warm weather into the deepest months of what is traditionally winter in New England, and now are getting cold weather in the month where we're supposed to have optimism and gradually warming temperatures, making us feel like there's hope eternal, only points to how difficult and problem-ridden our environment is. And I don't know how many examples of bad weather and irregular weather and wrong weather we need to see before we become tree huggers and bird lovers, as people who love the environment and want to preserve it are so often referred to. I'm always harping on the weather. It's hard to imagine, but I understand, I guess, how people can't automatically see that the environment is in great trouble when all around us the signs are like the handwriting on the wall. Yet I hear a lot, like from people and from shows on talk radio, that the environmentalists are crazy, and as I said, tree huggers and bird watchers, and that they should be put in their place and shouldn't be concerned about. I heard someone call in today to a show and say it's okay if Alaska melts because we'll grow oranges there, except that he probably won't need to eat an orange because he will have drowned from the water if Alaska should melt. So that argument doesn't quite go well. But what does it take to make people understand? At other times, talking to people face to face, saying something about the poisons in our food or the weather or the environment and what a problem we're in, sometimes people will just look like, huh? It doesn't occur to people. So I guess it's not that obvious to everybody. There's, unfortunately, between the last time I've been here and the time I come here, without fail, more horrific news of some horrible weather events happening that are putting the planet and people in distress, causing great environmental damage and obviously showing us that things are very wrong, but also causing people's lives to be turned upside down, and at the same time costing the federal government, as far as this country is concerned, a heck of a lot of money in disaster relief, a tremendous amount of money, with a lot of areas being declared emergency all the time. If you remember in the past, many years ago, say in the 50s or the 60s, when a major event happened of people's homes being blown away or people being flooded out, it was rare. And for places to be called emergencies, these were big events, but now it's happening 1, 2, 3, 4 all the time. Just yesterday, I heard that Texas has had like 6 inches of rain in a small amount of time. I heard California had tons of rain in a small amount of time. Hawaii got washed out with a brutal amount of rain, and all these things are breaking records. They have more rain in a short period of time than they ever had, or rain coming in a time when they shouldn't have rain. And Australia just had a Category 5 cyclone that ripped through one part of the continent and must have been something similar or worse to what we saw with the hurricanes Katrina and the other one that followed it, whose name I can't remember, that either came after or before it. It was a double whammy down in that region of the country. And I heard someone tell that they took a trip along the whole Gulf Coast that was influenced by the hurricane or affected by the hurricane, and saying it is a miserable mess, a very dire situation, even as we speak today, many months after this horrible event. So I don't know what it takes. Now, somebody was saying to me, oh, look, there's snow in Colorado. And again, that was another odd event. They're having the worst snowstorm. I don't know if it's panned out to be that, but yesterday or the day before was predicted the worst snowstorm of the winter, and a really horrible blizzard going on in Colorado. And people were saying, well, since it's the first day of spring coming and you're having the worst horrible blizzard in Colorado, how can global warming be a fact? I guess people miss the idea that we're having in succession the warmest winters on record, the warmest years on record, piling up, not exactly one year after another, but certainly accumulating as we go into this new century that we're in. And we see that glaciers are melting at a very rapid rate, and and that things are happening in degrees and measures that scientists didn't predict, exceeding what even they predicted under conditions of global warming. In other words, being worse than what the models for global warming predict. So while there is global warming, there is also irregularities. There are extremes of temperature that get too cold and get too cold at the wrong time, extremes of rain, drought. On a continent like Africa or India, you suffer even more severely than we do here in the United States, because people in those continents and some parts of Australia as well live with extremes of weather as it is. They live with very long periods of drought or dry seasons, and then very short or specific periods of rainfall, sometimes excessive rainfall. So when you disturb a balance that is already precarious and has to work even more specifically than what the weather in our country has to do, you're really doing damage. And as we see now, in the middle of Africa, Kenya and other regions in that area suffering extraordinary drought, and people are starving. I heard reports that dead cattle just litter the landscape everywhere. People without food, without water. A very horrible, massively horrible situation happening in the heart of Africa right now. And these are the things. I mean, what does it take to wake up? What does it take to wake up that when all the exhausts are going out of the cars, that not only is it going into the atmosphere and causing those changes that is one aspect of the irregularities we're seeing, but that it's also affecting our lungs, including that we're breathing all this stuff, that it's right here on Earth and right here in our faces and noses, and responsible not only for environmental degradation, but a lot of the disease that we're experiencing as creatures trying to walk this earth. So, yes, I am a tree hugger. I'd like to have a sign that says, I am a tree hugger. That's what I should have. And I am an animal lover, as I know people out there are as well. More people love animals than not. And were they to know just a fraction of what's going on with animals used in research, for example, they would be so appalled they probably wouldn't be able to sleep, be at rest with their consciences forevermore. It's what we don't know as what we don't have to have on our mind, and what we don't have to feel guilty about. And so we want to help the animals all the time. They're in great problem. And I hear people say, in reference to the environment, why do we care about saving a turtle? Why do we care about birds when we need gas, when we need oil? We do care. We do care. And many of us care, and we understand. Why do we about trees? Every time you see a tree go down that doesn't need to go down, or that you don't see trees being built up, you should feel sad. I'm not telling you how to feel, but if you had your wits about you, you would know that this is a very tragic event The trees are our friends. The animals are our friends. Nature is our friends. And like I've said before, nature is not for us to use. It's not at our disposal. It's not for our convenience. It's not something to neglect. And we would do well to get more in line and in balance with nature, in harmony with nature, than use it up and call it a resource. Even the word resource, as refers to things in nature and refers to humans, is a poor choice of words, because it really refers to exploitation, and that's not how we should be looking at things. And of course, there are wars coming over water. There's a big conference that's been in the news that's going on in Mexico City, which is having a very bad problem with water, as are many, many countries in Africa, as are many, many countries in the Far East, as are many regions in China, etc., as are some regions right here in the United States. Look at Phoenix as a city. Look at what Las Vegas is doing, taking all the water. Go see Phoenix. You can't believe that the city is able to maintain, and for how long, this dry, hot area that doesn't have its own really water resources and nature to support all this kind of industrialization or modern life that's going on there. And that's another record that's been broken since I've been talking to you recently and since I spoke with you last, the number of consecutive days that it has not rained in Phoenix. Oh, really? Oh, really? Yes. So let's be a little more aware. Let's not take stuff for granted. Let's get a little more. Of course, it's not on our television sets, so therefore we're not going to know a heck of a lot about it. It's not on the internet. It's not on the porn sites. It's not on the video games. It's not in the sports advertisements in between the sports matches. So I guess we're not going to know very much about it. I don't know how much it is in the schools, because the curricula of the schools is so stultified and scripted. I doubt that well-rounded education of things that should be brought up spontaneously is going on too very much in the schools. Speaking of how people believe about conservation and environment and animals and protecting animals, and please help animals. By the way, regarding animals, you can buy a license plate in Massachusetts that proceeds of some of which the proceeds goes to help animals in shelters, I believe, in some ways helping animals. And so if you're in the market or need for getting a license plate, please think of looking up the one that is for animals. Unlike some of the other specialized plates, the animal people don't have enough money to be putting ads on TV to make it known to you that this is a choice that you have. But be that as it may, I also might make mention of a poll that has been talked about recently, where it's been asked of Republicans and Democrats purportedly, how happy are you? And I guess it's a poll that's been going on for a long time, and that Republicans tend to be happier, I guess, by pretty much than Democrats do, than people who identify themselves as Democrats. And people were wondering what the reason was for this identification difference of happiness associated with it. And I had some thoughts on that myself, and it kind of ties into the environment too, that typically, generally speaking, broadly speaking, that if you are affiliated with the Democratic Party, part of the platform that you definitely have very high on your agenda is the environment. That Al Gore, in fact, is very keen on the environment, and it could be a reason too, besides other factors that we know about, that he lost the 2000 election, is that he didn't come out straightforwardly with all the knowledge and passion that he has about the environment. He probably could not do that which still holds him responsible for not having done it, due to the fact that he has to have the huge corporate donors to be that candidate at all. So there was probably effectively tape across his mouth to not talk about the environment. And of course now he's going around lecturing wide and large about the problems of the environment. He even had written a book about it, but you never heard that during the campaign. But if you are a Democrat, you definitely have environment, you have social justice on your mind, not because you care so much and you're going to give up your life like Mother Teresa, but somehow your conscience doesn't let you completely be at rest. You don't just follow the capitalist idea, generally speaking, that you get money and money and money, and you use resources, and you use the resources, and you find countries where you can get more resources, and you find the cheapest labor, and just always making the bottom line cheaper and cheaper, and the revenue and the effective profit more and more at all costs, and that you sit there, and the more gildedness you have, the more money that you have, the more riches that you have, the happier you should be, that this is contentment, this is where it's at. This is probably the broad difference, very generally speaking, not to say that either side does or doesn't have conscience about these things, but the Democratic platform certainly is much more concerned about the needs of people that can't quite get all these things so easily for many reasons that we won't go into here, and even in many instances where they suffer and work very hard, for example, health care, etc., versus a philosophy of I got mine, you get yours, and just being rich is great, and that can make you really happy. So this is just a thought, and here's where environment plays in as well. Gail Norton just resigned, and I don't know much about her, but I do know that during the time that she was in that position, nothing was done for the environment. In fact, a ton of things went backwards in the environment. More logging was allowed. Water levels of bad chemicals were allowed. Use of national parks for private industry was allowed. No cleanup, no true cleanup on nuclear waste sites really got moving. Industry had laxer standards for emissions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I read a tidbit about her, and I also heard some broadcast, small amounts of it, and people were saying that her legacy is one of having let industry have a great foothold and a prominence and a lead on any of these issues about the environment, wherein the environmental point of view did not come first and foremost as our concern. So that's the legacy. And generally speaking, people in the Democratic Party, and possibly many independents as well, really care about the environment and are smart enough to know, hey, this is not good for us. It's not good for our health. It's not good for the globe. And if you have children, if you have grandchildren, if you have neighbors, and if you think ahead, I just think about myself. I mean, of course, oh my goodness, if I had children, which I don't, thinking ahead, many parents say to me, oh my goodness, I don't like what's coming down the pike for my children. And that's why I care so much about environment. Okay. Yesterday was supposed to have been a day of protesting against the Iraq War across the United States and around the world. And the big news, I guess, is that very few protesters, so to speak, showed up in the various areas where the protests were being held. And so a lot of people that favor the war are saying this is proof that people, in fact, do not really think so badly about the Iraq War. But of course, we have to consider some other points of why people wouldn't come out to demonstrate against the war. Those being, I think, in this time that we're living in, people pretty much don't come out and demonstrate, period. People just don't come out. We're a different culture. We can really, I think a way that we would show our disapproval way more in today's culture would be to blogosphere it to each other and type it through the internet and maybe talk about it at the water cooler, talk about it at family dinners, on holidays. We're not in a culture anymore where people, at least for now, and that war is very far removed, even though we don't like it, and even though we know it's not good, and even though it's worrisome of what the hell's going on there, how much this is going to cost us, and the fact that it seems like, whoa, we may be going down the wrong pathway, and this is a little less secure than we thought it would be, and it's looking scarier rather than safer. Even though all that, it's rather remote. It's not something where we can't put bread on the table at the moment, so we don't feel it. And don't forget, in the times that there were demonstrations about the war, such as the one in Vietnam, there was very much more pictorial evidence and news evidence about what was going on in Vietnam. It was much more open and free. As were discussions. Don't forget now that if you discuss things, people may call you unpatriotic, and they call. I hear people that are favorable to the war and favorable to the way the government is running the country, running the country, talk about each other of the same persuasion as good Americans. They say hello to each other. They say, you're a good American, meaning the rest of the people, apparently the bigger majority by far, are bad Americans or not Americans at all, or communists or seditionists or lousy Americans. And so there is that, the fact that you're not really getting the evidence. Remember when the war began, journalists were not free to just go about and report on the war whichever way they saw it. They embedded journalists, and they had special paths and areas and parts of the war that they could look at and report about. And there was oversight of what they were doing. They weren't exactly going to just tell it whatever way they felt like telling it. They had to stay on the good side of the people that they were embedded with. So this is, so the fact that we're not getting really the kind of news that we used to get in this country, that we get like a little bit of, like, what, 20 seconds maybe of some kind of video that always kind of looks the same, just some smoke and some mortar fire or some black smoke from a burning situation, doesn't really show us the way we were able to see the war that we had before the last war, the War of Vietnam. So that's another reason. Even though it's scary in the broader psychological sense, and though people are against it very greatly to a great degree, it's much more remote. It's much more remote. And the chill factor that it's not easy to speak freely about things anymore. It's not easy. And someone brought up a good point. If you go to a demonstration now, you will be listed with the FBI, and the agency that does the spying, the one that's been in the news lately, the name of which I can't quite remember right now. It has an acronym, but the one that's been talked about for intercepting phone calls of that people are making in the United States to people overseas that have connections with so-called terrorists. And a lot of inference has been suggested that the listening in on phone calls is far broader than that, and presumably more information about this is coming out. But logs are being kept very much, as they were in the past, but I think probably even more so. So people are maybe also not going to go out and demonstrate for that reason. But we're not a demonstrating world until the pressure becomes so severe and so close to home. Back in Vietnam, it was very close to home too, because people were getting drafted. So it was very close to home. And that's where a lot of the ammunition for the passion too to go out and demonstrate was coming from. People who had the possibility of being drafted into the war. So that's what happened on the protests of the war yesterday. I saw some footage of soldiers in Iraq. As you know, I'm very against war, as are many people in general. And I believe that you should get blue in the face, yellow in the face, green in the face, until the end of time, trying to work things out before you would ever try to strike someone, blow someone up. And by the way, think about the logic of saying the minute we don't like something that we have to go blow somebody up, that when we talk about our children and we talk about training our children, the minute they do anything to strike out against somebody or use some physical means of getting their point across or their feelings across, they are punished. They are suspended from school. They are thought ill of. They have to face court. They may be put in detention. So think about that we tell our little kids, don't you dare be violent. And then we tell our kids, really, who are still kids when they're 18 years old, go and be violent, and we're going to train you to be as violent as possible, to know how to be deadly violent to the maximum degree. So think about that irony. Think about the fact that we're trying to say you shouldn't be killing or hurting people, and there we go, hurting them at the massive level. Yes, we have a phone call. Hello?
Hi, Nancy. How
Hello.
are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good. Nancy, I was just thinking, you know the big pharmaceutical companies, they're making so much money, multi-billion dollars, for distributing drugs within our community and within the world and so forth. And I was wondering, okay, we have so many different herbal remedies, and we have so many different types of healing that is now being performed through the herbal remedies and as well as the foods that we eat. I'm wondering if we should continue spending so much money on research and on the drug end, and when we can be doing, more with that money in terms of getting real remedies.
Okay, thank you. Well, you think the drugs are not real remedies, the pharmaceutical drugs that are put out?
Well, actually, Nancy, what is happening is that a lot of times when you see people getting the drugs and taking them from the pharmacies, what ends up happening is that they have so many different side effects. A lot of times you're reading, before you take the drug, you want to go and read up on it and make sure what types of side effects they're going to have. And sometimes the side effects are so much more than what you're going through at that particular time. So I'm just wondering, does it make a lot of sense?
Thank you. Great question. Love it. Side effects. I have to, it's a pitiful laugh, but I have to laugh that sometimes when you see commercials for some drugs by these pharmaceutical companies on TV, they say headache, nausea, vomiting, reproductive problems, asthma, let's see, what else could we, arthritis, and even occasional death. There's been an ad. Even occasional death has been known to occur with this drug. And then right after that, they say, use it to be beautiful and healthy and the best you can be. They really do. And that's how bad our thinking is, that's okay. You could have a stroke. Stroke is one of the big things. You could have a stroke. Yeah. And it's all right, but go with the, and then of course, a lot of them say, check with your doctor before you take it, and so on. And you know what checking with your doctor is like, all honor and respect to doctors who do not have an easy road to hoe. But checking with your doctor is like, yeah, take it. Like a lot of times the physicians don't know much more about the drug than you do. A lot of times you can catch the physician by having read up on a drug that, side effects they don't know. I see it all the time that people are facing side effects that aren't getting detected because they're really not paid attention to. And if you talk to a pharmacist a lot of times at the pharmacy when you go get the drugs, they're not really, and they're very good, they're very nice, the pharmacists, but they're not really attuned to being careful of knowing all the side effects. And although they have to by law, they have to be careful to really know and supposedly let people know about them. Sometimes they know about the most major ones that tend to show up from their experience. People come back and they say to them, you know, I had diarrhea too much from this or whatever, and so they know that. So yeah, the side effects are not really much known, generally speaking, and really not much paid attention to, even if they are known or not known. And they can be pretty heavy. And personally, I do not favor, personally, too much to go into pharmaceutical drugs that are brought out by the synthetic drugs, and some of them have natural ingredients. Personally, I don't favor those kind of drugs as a way to go. I really try to avoid them if I at all can. They do have their own complications, and they do things to people. And I'm much more into almost the Christian Science, though I'm not. I mean, if I were bleeding to death, I would, or bleeding profusely, I would seek, you know, regular medical attention. But I really, even more than herbal remedies, and although I believe in food, true, I really believe in trying to figure out what's wrong with yourself and helping yourself. Life is full of a lot of suffering, and life is full of a lot of problems, and life is full of a lot of physical malaise that has to do with your mindset, with your attitude, with your mood, with things that have happened to you in life, with your chemistry, with the food you eat, and with the drugs you take. So I tend to favor trying to be responsible for your health and not be a fanatic about it. Kind of know your body and kind of try to do your best with your body, you know, that you can. And I certainly fall way short of that. As far as the herbal remedies go and the Eastern medicine holistic remedies go, I personally do go for deep massage and believe in its therapeutic effects. But generally, I'm not either or. I'm not completely going to rule out drugs if necessary, nor am I going to follow the Eastern way, although I really want to avoid drugs from the pharmaceuticals if I can at all help it. I really do. Those are powerful things that enter your body. I really, if it comes to pass that I would have to take an antibiotic, I really dread that I might have to take an antibiotic. I wouldn't want that to happen to me. I think, for example, taking an antibiotic is a major, major thing to be doing to your body. And people do suffer major symptoms from the drug itself. Taking hormones is a major, major thing to be doing to your body. Taking blood pressure medications is a major, major thing to be doing to your body. On the other hand, if you have a situation where your lungs fill with water, or you're building up, your legs are filling with fluid, and you have to take a fluid remover, you may have to if things have come to pass. Now, a lot of times that can't be avoided. On the other hand, a lot of times the way we live, you can see sometimes the way people are living, that they're probably going to get some of these diseases that typically these drugs are used on, you know, by the food they're eating, by the lifestyle they're living. And don't forget the effect of stress on the body for bringing about. I was listening to a program about diabetes. It's a true epidemic in the country. It's an epidemic. It's actually an epidemic. I forgot what the numbers were, but not only among adults, but children are coming down with diabetes. And the physician I heard speaking about it was saying that it's the diets they have bringing about the diabetes. The diets and the lifestyle bringing about the diabetes. When you're eating a lot of the white bread, like is on the bun in McDonald's, that's full of non-nutritive fluff, that's got sweetener in it, and just has empty calories, empty calories, candy, Cocoa Puffs, Cheese Whizzes, empty calories. People are eating a lot of empty calories. And the sugar is getting disturbed in the body. So yeah, it's an epidemic, and boy, that's a terrible disease to have. That's not a disease. High blood pressure is an epidemic, and of course that's with salt. If you eat too much salt, and oh boy, do we eat too much salt. I try to stay away from foods that are in cans. Now I admit, once in a while I'm in a pinch and I have a can on the shelf and I'll take a can of soup. I hate to eat from cans. On the other hand, I don't have time to start cooking from scratch either, so that presents its own problems. Where are you going to get yourself some food that's cooked whole food, just the food, some real olive oil, some real vegetable oil, pure, not hydrogenated, some real lettuce that hasn't been sprayed to death, some real vegetables, and meat. I don't eat meat. I don't say once in a while I haven't slipped on that. I try to not eat meat. But even the meat, where are you going to get some regular pure meat? But certainly not the foods that have all the other crap. Look at a can of Campbell's soup. I was looking at one last night. I looked at it to see the salt. I really was in a pinch and I needed something to eat. So I looked at it to see what was in the soup. And I've looked at it before, but you know, you're hungry. And oh, that soup tastes so good. I'll tell you what kind it was. It was cream of mushroom soup. Now, isn't that delicious? And I'll tell you what. If you don't put the whole can of water in it, you put like 3/4 can, it's even creamier and smoother. And I'm telling you, it is delicious. So, but I'm saying to myself, and I knew what was in there already, and I knew it was high salt. That's what makes it taste so darn good in a pinch. But I'm still looking at it again to see, all right? Because why? As my human self, I want to eat that food. And I'm looking there. Man, I'm looking. All these crazy ingredients. None of it was food. None of it was food. It was all hydrolyzed, processed. I wish I had it here in front of me because it was all like pieces of chemistry that are skimmed off of food. None of it was just food. None of it was just mushrooms, milk, and I don't necessarily want to drink a lot of milk, but mushrooms, milk, cream, let's say cream, for example. No, it wasn't that. It was like all things that have been processed, and then some element of food, part of it, is put in there, but not the food, not the celery, not the onion. Some powderized, hydrolyzed, chemically altered, and part of food put in, and the part that has ingredients on the can is about this wide, this tall. So imagine how many ingredients are in that soup. And then I looked at the salt content, and the salt content was 900 grams of salt, and that's very high. And all the soups that taste so good have that much salt in them. I know because I buy another kind of soup that has no salt added, and I think the salt is down to, with no salt added, just celery, carrots, lentils. Health Valley makes one like that, no salt added. I forgot, it's not like down to 100 or 200 grams of salt go into the food that way. So, boy, just that one little can, you're getting a huge dose of salt. And we get way more salt than the body can use. So salt being, and that's very important in high blood pressure, salt. And we're taking in tons and tons of salt, and salt is what makes the food taste so good. For a while there, I know in French cooking, they use salt. In a lot of cooking, they use salt. But that comes from when salt wasn't prevalent, like in all this processed food, when you could take a little salt. But for a while, I was putting little salt in my potatoes when I was boiling them. I wasn't doing that, and then I did it. I liked the taste, and I stopped it again because somehow this idea of salt came to my attention. And it's that so many foods we're eating, you go down the aisles, they're full of salt, they're full of sugar, and they're full of this white bread kind of carbohydrate, non-nutritive, non-fiber. It's not the whole grain, it's not the real grain. And so we're getting ill from a lot of these ways, and then we end up, like I say, eating all this food and being stressed, going into taking these drugs, taking high cholesterol, anti-high cholesterol drugs, which have their side effects, of course, and high blood pressure drugs and so forth. And yes, I don't favor them. And will the research stop? Will the research stop for these drugs? Hell no. No, the research will not stop for these drugs. In fact, the research will get greater and greater. And now, as you know, a lot of the research is around genetic mechanisms that can specifically go to a specific place in the body and do their effects on it for whatever is required. And as a side of this, animals are required. Animal life is used. Animals suffer greatly with the research that is being done for these new drugs. And this is horrible. This is immoral. This is unconscionable, to say the least. That, of course, it'll be just another very sort of alien and foreign way to be dealing with the health of the body, to be dealing with the health and welfare of the body. Now watch me, God forbid, walk away from here and drop dead of a heart attack or get diagnosed with, God forbid. You know, because I'm not a paragon of health. Believe me, I'm not a paragon of knowing what's right for health. Far from it. But, and of course I have a stomach that reacts. I don't know about you out there, and of course you can call in, though we're almost coming to the end of the show now. I don't know about you out there, but I have a stomach that reacts to any of these these wrong chemicals. Right away I will get discomfort if I eat the wrong food. So that goes a long way to helping me be able to eat somewhat on the right side of things. On the other hand, I try to follow a non-meat diet and so on. And so this limits my choices, and then there are a lot of kinds of foods because of my bad stomach, even if they're pure, that don't digest very well. So then that may leave me somewhat imbalanced. So it's always a challenge, but we got to think about how we're living. We've got to think of stress. We can't just get up every day, say we got to go make money. We know the bills are due. We know the kids need things. We've got kids that we never prepared for. We just have them without thinking of the consequences, and there they are, and we have to support them, and all this stress is on our head every day, and we have to work as hard as we can, and we don't have enough money, and then we have to buy the food that's convenient and cheap, and that's bad for us, and so on it goes. And as far as herbal remedies go, I've tried a lot of them myself. Like I say, I don't fall into like, and I've certainly explored it. I've explored Eastern religions. I've explored Eastern cures. I've explored Eastern medicines. And I don't disagree with them, and I don't agree with them. And I know that Chemistry is what life is all about. Psychology is what life is all about metaphysically. Physically, everything boils down to chemistry. And so what is in those plants and what is in those foods is going into our body and can go into our body and have a chemical effect, either that will help us or will hurt us. That some kinds of herbal teas and other herbs, I'm sure, can do positive things for people in various circumstances. All I'm saying is, again, it's not the cure-all. Nobody's got the cure-all for our health. And certainly, though, if you can try to make your life more clean, more more simple in the foods that you eat, and more self-conscious and aware of what you're doing to yourself, mind and body together, and try to stay away from just thinking that you can pop a pill to avert any major catastrophe, because that ain't going to happen. And you know what happens with pills? Happens with any drugs. After a while, they, especially heavy-duty ones, they may not work as well too. You may find that in a lot of instances, what effect you can get from them in the beginning, you don't necessarily get from them as time goes on. So, and this also falls into back to the theme that we always start with, the environment. You have to be very worried for your health with the water that you're drinking and the air that you're breathing and the pesticides that are being put on the food. How the heck can you be healthy if you're eating stuff that's sprayed with poison, that's treated with chemicals before and after it's being brought to market or getting ready to be brought to market? So these are the many things. That was a great call, good idea. No, research will go on. Profit will go on. And I have to say this about the pharmaceutical industry, because we bring politics into this too. We remember that the current president was most brought into his candidacy and election by funds, most of all, from the pharmaceutical industry. And we know, too, that when the bill was made for this new Medicare plan, that the pharmaceutical industry was the main player at the table, one of the main players at the table with the HMOs and health insurance industry, making the plan for how things would be allowed to you. So keep that in mind as well. It's all one great big fabric, one great big fabric. And the pharmaceuticals are in no way going away. Remember the animals that suffer so greatly at the hands of research. I tell you, they suffer horrors, the likes of which anything most horrible you've ever heard of, as much or worse. Please help animals, love them. Don't kill spiders, don't think of them as awful. Don't hate snakes. Don't love them. Don't bring them into your home. But don't spray them and poison them. Love nature. Love earth. I don't believe in God, but I'll tell you, love God as a metaphor. Love each other. Try. Oh, it's hard. It's hard. I'm the first one to know that. That's why it's the lesson I have to learn. It's the lesson too late in learning. So, thank you very much.